Hi guys, in this video I'm going to be building this early war German tank whose name I cannot pronounce. The model kit for this video was kindly provided by HobbyLink Japan, and there is a link in the description below if you would like to check out the model kits that they have to offer. So let's take a look at the box and then I will tell you a bit more about the history of the vehicle while we start to build it. So you can see here this is the Krupp version of the tank. I'll explain a little bit more about that later on. So you can see from the side of the box here we have essentially two marking options, either those from early 1940 in Germany at the Putlos training ground, or from Norway in 1940. Looking at the instructions, they have a really nice overview here of the history of the vehicle. This is longer and more detailed than many I've seen. And the instructions themselves are quite typical, I believe, for amusing hobby kits, in that they are very crowded. There's lots going on in each of the steps here. There are many parts going on. There are lots of options and different combinations you can try, so it's really worth reading these instructions through first before you proceed. The kit offers two painting options. One is the overall German grey, which we are quite familiar with from the early war, and the other is the very early war German grey with the chocolate brown camouflage over the top. The instructions indicate that the grey and the brown scheme are only for the Putlos proving ground markings. I do like the grey and the brown, but on this occasion I decided to go for just the German grey because I wanted to experiment a bit with some colour modulation. Okay, so let's start the construction while I tell you a bit about the history of this vehicle. So this vehicle was originally developed in 1932, and of course Germany was banned from developing tanks under the Treaty of Versailles, so the name of this vehicle actually translates into a new construction vehicle, which is a code name basically to hide its development. Initially two prototypes were built of this vehicle, both in soft steel by Rheinmetall. And it's actually not possible to build those two versions with this kit because they had a different turret and slightly different arrangements and configurations around the hull as well. After those initial prototypes, three more prototypes were built with armoured steel, and these are the three versions which you can build with this kit. These three vehicles were tested at the Putlos Proving Ground in Germany, and that's one of the marking options which you saw earlier on the side of the box for the vehicles numbered 8, 9 and 10, even though there are only 5 of them built. So in general this design was considered to be quite unsuccessful. This is a fairly heavily armoured vehicle for the time, and of course it has 3 turrets, so it has quite a lot of firepower, but because of that it was also quite slow. And of course at the time the German doctrine was blitzkrieg, which emphasises speed and mobility over firepower. So this vehicle didn't really fit into that approach. Nevertheless, the 3 prototypes did land in Norway in 1940, and that's the second marking option which I showed you on the side of the box. A couple of the sources I read also suggested that the 3 armoured prototypes served in the Ukraine later on, and then ultimately their fate is a bit of a mystery, but it is assumed that they were basically scrapped at some point during the war or shortly after. And you can see I've built the hull up here while I've been talking. One thing you will notice a lot in these amusing hobby instructions is different options. I'm always a fan of that, it's nice to have different possibilities and different configurations. It would be nice though if the instructions actually told you what the different options were for. So for example here you can see 2 construction options for the wheels, but it's not really clear which one will be used in which situation. And it also does make the instructions quite crowded. Here's another example on the drive sprocket where we have an option for part A31, which could be replaced by part O1, but again no indication of when I would use one versus the other, which is a bit of a shame. Talking of options, this kit does come with quite a lot of photo etch. 2 frets here, and this includes a lot of photo etch tool clasps and clamps, and even in some cases the tools themselves, so you can see the shovel head there for example. I do like the fact that Amusing Hobby also provide plastic options if you don't want to fiddle around with the photo etch. Doors like this on the side of the sponsons can be positioned open or closed, and Amusing Hobby do provide photo etch detail for the inside of the door if you want to have it open. But of course there's no detail on the actual inside of the sponson there. One piece of photo etch which I definitely did not use was this piece here, Y29. This is a photo etch nut, and that's made by cutting a thin strip of photo etch and then constructing it, bending it into a hexagonal shape. And that's way more fiddling than I was keen to do. The machine guns in the two smaller turrets are movable. However, I did decide to glue them in position to give them a bit more strength. And again, the hatches on these turrets can be posed open, although of course there is no detail inside. Another feature in this kit is that you can shave off the rivets which are moulded onto the turret and use the photo etch replacements if you desire to do so. Before I added the road wheels or the drive sprockets, I gave the sponsons a coating of black paint. Basically I realised it would be extremely difficult to paint down here once those side panels were in place, so I gave everything a base coat of black. And that way when I put the German grey down, if I can't get into the corners, the black will at least provide a decent sort of shadow coat there. The tracks are individual links with 117 pieces on each side, and Amusing Hobby provide this jig here to allow you to insert the pins and construct the tracks. Personally I found this extremely difficult. I found the holes weren't particularly clear and therefore the pins would often just go halfway in, or worse, they would bend and snap. And then strangely, once I was about halfway through making one of these pieces of track, I realised that there weren't enough pins to go around. And looking at the sprue map on the first page as well with instructions, it seems that there simply weren't enough pins. You need 117 pins times 2 for each side of the track, so 234 pins for the left, 234 more for the right. And according to the numbers and according to my experience, there simply didn't seem to be enough pins to go around. So given that and the difficulty of using that little jig, I simply glued the individual links together and then positioned them around the wheels before that glue had set up. It's not an ideal solution because it means that there are holes between the links rather than having the track pins in there, but it is what it is. My next step, once the tools and everything had been put into position, was to give the entire model a coat of German grey. Because this was the base coat and I wanted some colour variation later on, I decided to mix the German grey about almost 50-50 with XF1 black. And of course I did keep the turrets separate for painting. Next I put some variations onto the paint coat using the regular German grey, not darkened. This was very much an experiment for me. This is a bit like the marbling effect you see aircraft modelers use sometimes. It looks very stark here. I'm very aware that quite often effects that you put onto a model get toned down massively with subsequent weathering or varnishes and so on, so I did want this to stand out a little bit more than I might necessarily want it to stand out at the end. And then finally I added a light thin mist coat of German grey lightened with some XF19 sky grey, and I applied that only in certain areas, mainly from above, mainly in the raised details, to provide a highlight. And I think you can see there that does seem to have toned down those colour variations, those marbling effects which we saw in the previous shot. The next step was detail painting, so the machine guns, the spare track links, the tools. And then the whole model was given a coat of gloss varnish before the application of the decals. These decals went on very nicely, a bit of mark set underneath them and a bit over the top, and they laid down very flat indeed. They're pretty standard German markings. Probably what stands out the most is this elephant marking on the front. For some reason there are two of these on the decal sheet, a left-handed version and a right-handed version, but only one of them is ever called out. For the exhaust, I didn't want to go with the very heavily weathered rusted effect which I've done in the last few models, so I used the sponge chipping technique to put on a few rust colours. This is Vallejo Saddle Brown, and I used the brush to add a few chips as well. I wanted to give the impression of the paint starting to flake off due to the heat and the rust starting to take effect, but nothing too heavy. After adding some lighter orange, I wasn't really happy with the result, so I went to my AK rust deposit set, and I used a medium rust colour there to try to blend in things a bit better. Once I glued those track links together, I gave them a coat of dark grey mixed with a small amount of dark iron, and then when that was dry I added some AK streaking grime into the recesses to start the weathering process. Most of that will get covered up later on anyway. And to get some randomness in the pattern, I also speckled on some of that streaking grime. It's quite hard to see the speckling with the dark tracks, but you can see here, if I do it over a piece of paper, that's the kind of effect we'd expect to get on the tracks. I then dry brushed some silver over the raised area of the tracks. And the same on the inside where it would be in contact with the drive sprockets. And in that shot you can also see the effect there of the splattered streaking grime just breaking up that grey slightly. Taking some Abteilung 502 Shadow Brown oil paint, I mixed it into the consistency of a wash and applied it as I would normally around the details. I thought it was important to use quite a dark wash here because obviously the vehicle itself is quite a dark colour. And if I used anything lighter, the contrast would be significantly reduced. And here we can see the result of that wash, and although I've been quite messy and I need to clean it up with some clean enamel thinners, I think it does look good and it gives a nice grimy appearance. In a couple of cases, instead of wiping up the excess, I ran it down in streaking motions down the side of the turret here, for example. And even though it was quite glossy still at this stage, I was really happy with the progress so far on the kit. There's some nice colour variation without too much weathering. Then it was time to superglue the tracks into place. And then I gave the entire kit a couple of coats of matte varnish. That has had the effect of, once again, just reducing slightly those contrasting shades, but they're still visible, and I think particularly on the sides there, they're quite visible as well. I didn't want to do a huge amount of weathering on this vehicle, and I also wanted to go for a dry dust kind of weathering rather than a wet mud approach. So I thought I would use some pigments, and I picked this European Earth and Light Dust colour. I started by dry applying the European Earth pigment to the tracks, and doing this over some tissue so I can collect any excess and use it later. And I'm just trying to work the pigment into the recesses, making sure I get the inside of the tracks as well. And then when you turn the vehicle the right way up, that leaves some pigments naturally falling off the tracks onto the sponsons there. And to weather that, I simply moved the pigments in a downwards motion with a dry brush to kind of suggest streaks of mud which have dried out, bits of dust which have run down, and so on. It's a very basic weathering technique, but I do like it. And of course, I apply the pigment quite heavily on the wheels as well. For the front of the vehicle, I apply the pigment at the bottom and then streak it upwards so that the dust effects are lighter near the top of the vehicle. I'm not using pigment fixer here, but the pigment should stay on relatively well, especially now that the model has a matte varnish, and so it has that very micro texture to it with a much higher surface area than a gloss coat. I thought maybe I should add some weathering, some dust effects to the top of the hull, because it wouldn't be pristine. This is where things started to go slightly wrong for me. I applied some pigments, I wasn't quite happy with it, and so I tried to remove them with some enamel thinners. That didn't work out very well at all, and it left me with these sort of slightly strange stains on the sides there, which I worked and I worked and I worked to try to remove. I couldn't really get rid of them, and in the end I added some more European earth pigment just to try to get rid of those previous pigment marks. Finally I went back to my industrial earth oil paint and added a couple of fuel stains. And a bit of grease around some of the bolts on the wheels. And with that, the vehicle was complete. So before I show you the final results, let me say thank you once again to HobbyLink Japan for supplying the model kit in this video. There's a link in the description if you want to check out their website. And of course, thank you to my Patreon supporters who helped make this video possible. Their names are on the screen now, and their support via Patreon helps me to buy various tools and weathering products and kits and so on. So thank you very much guys, that is greatly appreciated. Okay, and so that completes the build of this kit. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. This was a really fun kit to build, and I particularly like the fact that it includes both photo etch parts for advanced modelers, but also plastic options for less experienced modelers as well. So it's got a nice balance there, and that did make it an easy kit to build. Certainly there were no fit issues or any major complaints, apart from that strange issue with the tracks. It's been a while since I've built a German grey vehicle, and I don't think I've built one on the channel before. But it was good fun experimenting with that colour modulation effect, and that is definitely something I would like to try again in the future. Having said that, my next video is going to be me doing something with this old Academy Panzer IV H kit. So thank you everyone for watching, and if you would like to see more videos then please remember to subscribe if you haven't already. And in the meantime, perhaps you will like one of these 4 recommended videos.